Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mind Matters, empowering conversations for public safety professionals, where we'll discuss topics involving wellness and first responders. Join me on this journey of learning from subject matter experts in their various fields of psychology, medicine, leadership, and many more. You can find our show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Let's get into the show. I'm your host, Elizabeth Morris. Welcome to Mind Matters, where we explore the emotional, psychological, and leadership dynamics shaping our public safety professionals. I'm Elizabeth Morris. I'm joined by my co-host, Gary Fly, and today we are truly excited to welcome someone who not only talks the talk, but lives in clarity and heart. Paul Butler is an international sought-after speaker, trainer, and storyteller known for motivating audiences across North America and around the globe, because I know you were just in Alaska or headed that way. With 27 years in law enforcement, starting as the youngest police chief in South Carolina, Paul has held nearly every leadership role in the field, including chief deputy of Horry County Sheriff's Office. He's also a graduate of the prestigious FBI National Academy and currently serves as their official MC for both the FBI NA and FBI LEDA annual training conferences. But beyond the stage and the spotlight, Paul is a husband and a proud father and grandfather, and he's deeply intentional about protecting his own mental wellness, which is what we're talking about as well. Carving out time to unplug completely each year for dedicated travel time, I know, with your wife, and staying grounded in the relationships that matter most. So today we're going to dive in to the kind of leadership that lasts, how to cultivate cultural awareness and trust within your team, and how to balance excellence in your work with peace in your personal life. So welcome, Mr. Butler.
Love it. I'm honored to be on here. I love the work that you're doing, not just with the podcast, but what you all do through FMRT. I mean, it's a game changer for the world. So thank you for that. It's helping that profession tremendously.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. And I most recently saw you in Virginia. And I know you are headed out for a week of vacay with your wife coming up soon, where you do clock out and really take some time for your own mental wellness. So we appreciate you working us into your busy travel schedule. So first I wanted to jump in because I know Gary and I were really intrigued about this, and I found my notes from 2022. Yes, I'm very old school. I like to keep my notebooks. And I remember you sharing your 4-part team member model at the North Carolina Sheriff's Association conference, back in 2022. I think it was April, related to, it was team leader, team builder, teammates, and I believe you said the troublemakers. So can you walk our listeners through those 4 roles and how they show up for team dynamics? And Gary, please jump in if you have any other questions at this time.
No other question. I'm so intrigued by it. And years ago, Paul, I was exposed to some work Gallup had done around disengagement and engaged employees. And they are still seeing some trends recently about disengagement increasing. And I just feel like there's a huge parallel between their work and what you talk about. So I'm really anxious to hear you unpack this a little bit and talk about how you came up with it and what it means for leaders and organizations.
Well, I appreciate you asking the question, Mr. Gary, because obviously I'm not a psychologist. I don't have any degree in that, but I do have a lot of experience in it. I did 27 years on the job in law enforcement, and just in my life and in my family, I started noticing the parallels. Humans are just humans wherever they go. People kind of end up being people wherever they go, no matter what the profession is. And when you ask, how did you come up with that model of team leaders? And those are the people that I say are those A personalities. Those are the hard chargers, and what they have in common is they're mission focused. They are just always pushing the mission. Let's go do this. Let's accomplish this. The weakness of a team leader, because everybody dreams of being a big tough team leader, the shot caller, but that weakness of a team leader is sometimes they view the mission as more important than the women and the men. And so a lot of times they just consider that collateral damage. Hey, you can't do the job. You're not going to make it. You're going to wash out of this. We're just moving forward without you. because the job's very important. But now, and I don't minimize that, you better have some of those on your team. This job's important. I mean, law enforcement is an incredibly important job that every now and then you don't have the luxury of taking that pause and saying, hey, is everybody okay before we keep doing the job, right? You just got to do it and then kind of circle the wagons later. Then I think about the team builders in life. Now, those are the ones that I believe are people first, not mission first. And you better have a lot of those on your team too. Somebody who reminds you every now and then at that command table, hey, I know it's nice that if we work 80 hours in a row, we can get this done, but what about our people? What about their families? How do we feed them? How do we take care of them? Somebody has to be that voice of gentleness and caring, or you're going to lose your people, and therefore the mission just ended, right? So that balance, and this is what I say, too many team leaders at the top, the people will suffer. Too many team builders at the top, and the mission's going to suffer. It takes a balance. They need to work very well together. Now, what I believe you should have the most of on every team, what you should be looking for ideally, it's not equal parts. You better have more teammates than anyone else. Teammates are attitude focused. I worked with them all my life, and I love them. They kind of keep the thing moving when it's in danger of falling apart for a myriad of reasons, right? These are the ones who say, hey, we got a job to do. Let's just go do it. Hey, let's go take care of that person. Let's go visit them in the hospital. They just have that attitude that says, how do we make this work, right? And then I say it this way, and it's as simple as it gets. If you're not pushing the mission every day of your life, if you're not taking care of the people every day of your life, if you're not showing that attitude that everyone around you gets better because you're around, well, then you're simply being in what I call the trouble spot. These are the people who have abandoned the we and they're only interested in the me. I say team leaders are mission focused, team builders are people focused, teammates are attitude focused. Trouble is self focused. They're only interested in them. And Miss Elizabeth does a good job of talking about how do you unplug and recharge and do those things. Absolutely, you've got to take care of yourself. But if that is your only focus, my promotion, my pay raise, my time off, I don't care if anyone else is suffering, then you're causing someone else trouble on that team. And when you ask, how did I come up with that model? It's because I've played every one of those positions on teams before. I mean, I don't know any other way to say it. I love to lead. I love to make hard decisions. And every now and then, I'm not afraid if it hurts someone's feelings. I don't mind that. I want to be a builder. I love to see people get better around me. And one of the only signs of success is they rise higher than I was able to rise myself. I want to be that rocket fuel that others use to go places I couldn't go. I think my natural position is that teammate. I love to just have a great attitude. I love positive energy. I love those things. But I'm going to tell you, it's easy to slip into that trouble spot. All you have to do is watch someone else get promoted that you think you're better than they are. Watch someone else get a pay raise. Watch someone else get to go on that big fancy vacation. Watch somebody else getting to do things that you wish. And all of a sudden you start thinking, why them? Not just why not me? That's okay. That's human nature. But you start thinking, why them? And next thing you know, you're looking to tear down others to make yourself look taller. And that's a danger zone on any team in America.
That comparison, that I was going to ask you, what are some of those early signs, even in yourself, that, a teammate may be slipping into that category of the trouble spot? But I think you spoke to that. It's when you're starting to compare, judge, critique others, would you say?
Well, no doubt about it. And I think maybe some of it's jealousy driven, for lack of a better word. But I'm going to tell you what we used to do in my day. You keep in mind, I started in 1988. And back in my day, they taught patience. We don't teach patience very well today. I did it okay with my children, they'll tell you. But I don't do it with my grandchildren at all. No matter what I'm doing, if I were in surgery and one of them needed an ice cream bar, we're going to have to wait on the surgery and go get it. We don't teach patience very well. And in my day, when I started with the Horry County Police Department in 1990, you had to have a minimum of 5 years experience before they would allow you to apply for any promotion or any special assignment. So in other words, if you were an Army Ranger, you couldn't apply for the SWAT team until you'd worked in the job for 5 years. Well, now, you know what that creates. It creates that idea of watching other people who are seemingly less qualified be qualified for positions that you're thinking, I'm better than they are. This person's better than they are. So then we start questioning the system. Well, they were not looking for the best people. Well, if you want to know the truth, I think that a system is set up for failure when all it does is say, I'm going to plug in the best people instead of cultivate the best people for the future. You got to watch that danger zone. And so we sit there watching other people get promoted for 5 years. See, we don't teach that patience anymore. I met a sergeant with a large agency the other day. who's in charge of, I think, 18 people on his shift. He's got 4 years experience. There's no waiting anymore, right? We're learning on the job. Do you know what we give somebody who gives us 5 years now? We'll decorate them like a North Korean general. I mean, I saw a guy the other day. I was out west. He had more medals than MacArthur, right? Like this chest full of medals. And I was like, hey, man, what did you do? And he's like, just got off FTO, sir. And I'm like, oh, my God, right? Like at some point, this is what I say in my training, and you watch this for the future. There's nothing wrong. If you've ever had a dog, you want to teach them tricks, right? And the easiest trick to teach them is to sit. And the way to do it is you have to give them a treat to make them sit. But now, if you've got to give a treat to your dog every time they sit, then you don't have a trained dog. You got a spoiled dog. And at some point, we cannot keep giving that idea that you get a treat every time you do something. This job goes with a lot of sacrifice. And at some point, if you're not willing every now and then to leave a little more on the table than you take, if you're not willing to give a little more than you're going to walk away with, then you're going to struggle in the business of service, especially public service. It's just not designed that way. So I want to change that mindset.
I think those are you've raised so many fascinating points. When you went through your 4 roles and you started talking about the focus, right? That immediately kind of recalibrated the way I thought about it. Mission focused, people focused, attitude focused, self focused. And then you started talking about, hey, we need to have a different percentage of people in each of these categories. I think that's a really helpful framework for leaders to think about. Okay, what is my mix? What is my ratio? And is it the right sort of mix for the operation or the organization at this point in time? Because I think it may change over time, right? An organization's needs may change, and the roles we play, to your point, may change. And that framework for me just became instantly clear, or clearer, as you described that. That's really helpful. I'm curious if you see that sort of aha with other leaders or with leaders when you talk about this, or how people receive this information.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because I do believe that most people come with a natural tendency to be one of those. Okay. I mean, there are people who are mission focused and they never break out of that mold. And that doesn't decrease their value. You just need to make sure you're putting them in a place where they can be successful. I say this: if you have a struggling employee and they need a gentle talk, they need a friend. You know, those ones who sit down at the table with us and say, hey, Gary, just want to talk to you about what's going on in your life, and your work performance just isn't awesome, right? Well, you better not send a team leader, because that personality is there to kick them in the pants. Those are the ones who are going to create that distance between them and the employee. Hey, you better get better or you're going to have to get gone. I've heard those conversations. I've given those conversations. I know that. Likewise, if you have that employee who needs that kick in the pants, and sometimes that's all we need, is just somebody who kind of reminds us, hey, you got a job to do. Suck it up, buttercup. Get busy. Well, you can't send a team builder. I mean, that'll be the guy who causes the person listening to the message to miss the meaning. Mm-hmm. They'll go home at the end of a conversation with a team builder and say, hey, honey, I think they're about to promote me. Oh, yeah, why? They told me I'm not going to be in patrol much longer, right? You've got to make sure you're not so gentle that somebody misses the message. You've got to send the right messenger or you lose the meaning. And I always think that it's just so helpful. And this is another thing, Mr. Gary, I think you're going to like a lot, because it's so true, is I believe leadership is best applied on the lowest level possible. Okay. So that means that if you really want to know who should be running a shift, who should be running a crew, who should be running a squad, who should be running your McDonald's, right? It should be where the absolute most people are, and that's on the teammate level. If we don't get better at leading on the peer level, well, we're always going to struggle when we make it to the upper level. But because people need to practice their leadership with their friends. And
holding one another accountable, and giving them grace. I think you talk about the toe-stepping conversations, and teammates can have that with one another. Do you agree? Or?
Oh, I say that probably the best accountability ever held on me in my life came from the peer level. Because if the captain or the chief calls me in and tells me I have to get better, well, how are they going to know if I get better at 2 a.m. on a Saturday night? They're at home asleep. But now I'm going to tell you, if one of my friends, one of my coworkers said, hey, you need to pick it up. You're making the job harder for all of us. Well, you can't lie to them because they're with you at 2 a.m. Mm-hmm. And this is what I'd remind my young people on the job today, that the peer level is exactly where you're supposed to practice your leadership. The worst time to start trying to be a leader is once you get promoted. Worst time in the world. You had better start developing those skills on the lowest level possible. So I say this, that if you have officers who are sitting around a lunch table and they're not willing to call their buddies out when they say something wild or ridiculous or racist or whatever they're talking about these days, if they're not willing to call them out at the lunch table, they're never going to be strong enough to run an entire squad or division or a department. At some point, you've got to make sure you are practicing your leadership before you get in a leadership role.
Love that sentiment. And that's a great example of that, right? When you're sitting around with others in this maybe a little more relaxed environment. But as you were talking, actually, the thought that came to mind is, how would you coach younger or folks younger in their career to practice their leadership? One, obviously, if they are engaged with coworkers and they hear or see something that's not appropriate, is maybe that's the primary way. But I'm curious if you have any other sort of practical tips for folks younger in their career thinking about leadership.
Well, I always say it, and let's go. Miss Elizabeth mentioned it, and I appreciate her saying it. Is my wife and I just celebrated 32 years of marriage. All right. Now, I say it this way. This is the truth. People find it hard to believe. I've had 32 wonderful years of marriage, 32 awesome years of marriage. Now, my wife, she's had about 5. All right. and none of those are in a row. That's just kind of what we've cobbled together over the 30
hit or miss.
100%. But because if you want to know the truth, those positions apply at home. So I've always thought I wanted to be the man of the house. I wanted to be, the guy running my household. I had a father who was that way, and I always thought that that's what it meant to be successful, is to get in there and be that shot caller and, hey, don't worry about your knee bleeding. Just pedal that bicycle, keep pedaling, right? And I found out that causes trouble inside of a household. You can be trouble inside that household by playing the wrong position from the one they need, right? And so when you talk about those tips, I would say that most successful business relationships are run very much like very personal and sometimes romantic relationships. In other words, if you care about those people, you're playing the long game. Sometimes you think you're right, but you wait until the right timing to do it. Okay. Now that's our natural position, is how do I wait until Gary and I get along fishing on the lake and I can say, 3 months ago, you mentioned something at the table. Can't do that. The moment's lost. It's no different than disciplining a child. You can't do it 2 weeks later and expect them to connect the two things. You got to do it immediately. So if you care about them, if you love them, I'm talking about your child or your coworker, if you care about them, a lot about addressing a problem is before it becomes a problem for you. In other words, before I'm emotionally invested in it. The natural thing to do in our workplace these days is Elizabeth says something that upsets me. And so what I do is I don't say anything. That's usually our first event. I don't say anything. I just start watching her more closely now. Well, then she says it again. She doesn't know she's upset me. So what's our natural response? I go and tell someone about it. Not her. I go and talk about her. Hey, I'm having this trouble with Elizabeth. Well, you know what most people do? Yeah, me too. Right? That's all they do, is they just kind of want to codify it and hope that makes it go away. I let you vent and then it went away. Now, the third time Elizabeth does it, I'm against her. I'm starting to work on her. And I want you to know that's where I'm out planting the seeds, because I realize she and I are about to have a conflict and I want to build my team of support already. So now I'm rallying people against her. And you keep in mind, we've had 3 problems, and she is not aware of one of them. By the time I walk in to slam my hand down on the desk and say, Elizabeth, I have a problem with what you said, most of the time she has no clue what I'm talking about. I'm emotionally upset about it. She's in the dark. We're not on the same level. Conversation's never going to go well. What I encourage people to do is mention your problem before it becomes a problem for you emotionally, while we can still have that conversation. And if you want to know the truth, most of the time that's when it happens in the conversation. Elizabeth says something, I say, wait, what do you mean by that? And just casually, because you'll find out 99 times out of 100, she didn't mean to offend me. She didn't mean to say anything personal. What you can't do is let it build into something personal before we have the conversation. So I think that's healthy for people to practice on the lowest levels possible. You don't make it through a marriage. If what you're going to do is wait until you have 10 problems to talk about before you say, hey, we need to have a conversation. At some point, you've got to have those conversations.
That's a daily practice too. And as you were that was a great example and crosses over not only to public safety leaders, but like you said, in relationships and businesses. And what it made me think of is, why are we not teaching this to our kids? Why is this not a class in high school about fierce conversations? And I know, Gary, you've heard of this book, but Nonviolent Communication, which is, in my opinion, somewhat of an extreme title, but speaks to this. Having those fierce conversations in the moment before it becomes this catastrophe internally and sometimes externally, like you spoke to, of rallying other people against them, and the other person just having no idea what the issues are. But yeah, I think we should rally together and encourage this to be taught in our schools, and at minimum our BLET schools, if really focusing on the public safety sector. Yeah, that was a great example.
Well, and this is, in my opinion, the other side of the coin. I always try not to dump too much on one person to carrying the load. We're all supposed to be pulling the wagon together. And so I don't let people off the hook. I think that the answer to that question you just put out there is, why don't we do better at it, and why don't we teach it on a lower level? Well, I would say that a lot about that is we don't set up comfortable speaking spaces. I heard Nick Saban speak. He's the coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide, a super championship team. I mean, historically, maybe the best team ever to play the game. And I'm no Alabama fan. I'm a South Carolina Gamecock. But I realized we couldn't beat their cheerleader. Right? Like, we struggle against teams like that. And I looked at the stats. The fastest player on Alabama isn't any faster than the fastest player on South Carolina. So it's not just a physical component. There has to be a mental component. Well, I was fortunate enough to hear Nick Saban speak twice in Alabama. And he's a fantastic speaker, excellent leadership speaker that applies on all levels, not just in football. And he said, because you keep in mind, he's in his 70s, and he's coaching kids who are 18 and 19 years old. And he said what they all have in common is they're the best at their position. Somebody has told them they're the best. They've watched themselves on the news. They've read it themselves in the paper or online all their lives. And all of a sudden, they come to Alabama, and I'm about to ask them to do something they've never been asked to do before, and that's to sacrifice a little bit of your individuality to make everyone else around you better. All right? We're not just going to build the team around one player. You're going to have to help them get better. Well, a lot of them aren't used to that. Mm-hmm. So he said, what is it that young people need? He said, what allows me to continue to connect with them, even though we have this incredible age gap? He said, young people are desiring two things in this world that we're not giving them, that we're struggling in, that we better get better at. The first thing is they want to be heard. It's not like in my day when you just did what you were told. When my boss told me to do something, I did it, whether I liked it or not, whether I agreed with it or not, whether I thought it was productive, whether it was legal or not. I did whatever they told me to do because I just assumed they knew what they were doing. They were the boss. Young people don't feel that way. They need more ownership, and we ought to be giving it to them. Everybody calls them the why generation, right? Like, they always want to know, why are we doing things? Well, to me, that's thirsting for knowledge. I never asked why because it didn't matter to me. If it matters to them, feed it to them, right? Nick Saban said, you have to create an environment where they can be heard, where they can have a voice. Now, that's the easy part. I love what he said here. He said, because too many times we give people a voice only so we can tell them they're wrong. And I'm the smartest one in the room. I need to show you now why you don't deserve an opinion. I've been fooled into that before. I've been sitting at a table before where the boss is up there talking and said, Butler, you got something you want to say? No, sir, I really don't. Well, you look like you have something you want to say. Well, yes, sir, I have things I could say, but I don't want to say them. No, you should be able to say anything, Butler. This is our safe space. All right, well, I think you're wrong. Well, let me tell you why you're an idiot, right? Well, in other words, you fooled me into giving my opinion so you could make me feel like a fool. Nick Saban said, if you're going to create an environment where people can be heard, you had better create an environment where people can feel respected at the end of that opinion. He said, I'm the coach on Saturday, and when I make a decision, that's what we're going to do. I'm the coach. That's my job. But on a Tuesday afternoon at practice, when one of them says, hey, coach, I have an idea, why are we not listening and trying it? Why are we not giving them a voice and a little bit of ownership? Then when I make a different decision, it's because I think this is best, not because I think you're stupid. That is what we've got to do better in our organizations these days, is we have to start creating this environment, not where they just have an opinion. I love everybody's doing a survey these days, and we'll let you do this blind survey. But at the end of it, you don't really see a lot of change. In other words, I heard you, but I don't really respect you. And I think that one thing a leader misses the mark on the most, and this is what I've tried to get better in my personal life at, is asking the people around me that I care about. In other words, that's everybody. Am I doing anything that bothers you? Just whenever I have a chance to speak to them one-on-one, am I doing anything that aggravates you? Am I doing anything that makes your life more difficult? Makes your job as a wife more difficult, as my daughter more difficult, as my son-in-law more difficult? Am I doing anything that bothers you? Because I promise you, if I am, it's not intentional. Well, now, the first few times you ask that, they think it's a trap. Right? Okay. So they're never going to tell you that. No, sir, you're doing great. But you want to know the only sign of success in a leader's life when it comes to a difficult conversation is whenever they walk in, they get a chance to sit down and say, Gary, remember how you've always asked if I've ever had a problem with something you've done? Remember how you've always said, if I ever do anything to bother you, let me know? And they can start the conversation by using your permission. I think that a leader's number one priority inside of an organization has to be to make the difficult conversations easier to have. And the only way you can make a difficult conversation easier to have is make everybody believe I'm willing to have it.
That's phenomenal. You're setting that foundation, right? By asking, tell me what I can do better. And then it diffuses in many ways where they do feel more confident. Although I would be curious to talk to your son-in-law and to determine, does he really tell you the truth?
Well, right now, I don't think they are.
Right.
If you want to know the truth, I mean, I have a fairly assertive personality, and I think that they're just kind of molding to me. But I want you to know that one day, and they will, when they have a problem, I want them to come directly to me. I don't think it's a sign of success, is that they are mad at me at the Thanksgiving dinner, and somehow they have to get in the car with my daughter and tell her all about it, ruin their ride home because he has a problem with me. I encourage them, come talk to me, because what is my promise to them? I tell them, if I ever have a problem with you, I'm going to talk straight to you. You're not going to have to wonder if I like what you're doing. You're not going to have to ask Holly or Emily if your dad likes what I did. I talk directly to them, gently, constructively, lovingly. But what I don't want to do is just let some some issue fester and become an infection inside of my whole family. Way to do it? Talk about it early when it's still casual, before the emotions take over. And everybody has a chance to say, hey, if you don't like what I'm doing, please let me know, because it's not intentional.
And also get the ideas. I liked also, speaking about the Alabama coach of there's a time and place. And I think we recognize that. And I would be interested to know, do you get pushback, particularly from our chiefs and sheriffs, like, oh, I don't have time to do that. Like it's a critical, I don't need them asking why when, we're on call and we're going to a domestic, but it hopefully resonates with them. It's like, you're right. There's a time and place where there's not time to ask those questions. However, you have the one-on-one or in the group setting when you are having those meetups in the morning or having coffee with a peer to be able to talk through those ideas. But yeah, do you get some pushback? Because what we do in supporting, psychology and mental wellness and medical, and for some it's the touchy-feely, right? Well, you kind of get into the touchy-feely a little bit.
100%.
What pushback do you hear, and do you see that, do you see them kind of cracking open? I do, being in the audience for at least a handful of times, hearing you speak, because at first it's kind of like, yeah, right, I don't have time to talk to these kids. But yeah, what's the pushback, and are you seeing really leaders like accepting this model, so to speak?
Well, I have seen some do it. And I mean, small agencies embrace it the quickest because you can turn a small boat around very quickly.
Yep.
Right? The big boats turn very slowly. But I want you to know there are a lot of them out there. I've got Chief Penn in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. You know Chief Penn?
That's where I am.
700 on staff. 700 on staff. And it brought me in and said, we're going to adopt this model. We're going to do this, because he realizes he shouldn't be the messenger for that. He can't be. He is too busy for that. Too many external focuses. That is why I believe that the two most important processes in an organization are the hiring and the promotional process, right? I mean, that's why you all are so valuable. You give that insight. There are no more important things you do than that. The people who are going to come into my family and influence people around me, and the people I'm going to put in positions to be my voice when I'm not there to talk. And I don't think a lot of leaders look at it that way. So this is what I find. The leaders who are so busy that they don't have time for their people, it's usually because they've hired or promoted the wrong people. right?
Yep.
Now, you hire the wrong janitor, you better get ready to be working the mop yourself, right? I mean, that's just human nature. And so this is what I ask those who give a little pushback when they tell me how busy they are, is what are you doing that is more important than the reputation and future of your organization? You tell me, because if it's filing some paper, I got to see that paper, right? I want to see the thing that is so much more important than your agency's reputation and the future of that entire organization. Well, both of those things come down to only two things, not policy and procedure and all that. No, nobody in the public's reading those. It'll be your people, your embassies, the ones who go out and speak on your behalf when you're not there. They should be the ones doing that. I get it that the chief can't go to every squad meeting and say, hey, anybody got a problem with the way we're doing things? Because that's not really an appropriate level to be talking about problems in the organization. They don't have a clue what a chief does. They should be able to talk to their corporal or their sergeant about it. They should be able to talk to their lieutenant about it, possibly even their captain. And I don't think that there's enough engagement on those levels to give those folks a voice.
And I wanted to put something in your mind, even for later, that we could talk about is, one thing we notice is that, okay, here's a candidate that's gone through the hiring process. They've been through background and polygraph or CVS, whatever it may be. They've been given a conditional offer. They come to us for their psych and medical evaluation. Now they're in field training and they're dropping out. And then we'll get a call from the chief or especially in a smaller agency, or the recruiter. What happened? What did y'all not see in the psych eval? And it's like, we welcome that. Let's talk through all of the pieces. It's not just one. But, over the years and just, field research and anecdotal, it's those FTOs. Like, I think this information for them is so important, because between the recruiters and the FTOs, those should be the cheerleaders. And especially FTO, I mean, they're setting the immediate tone for the culture. And what we're finding and hearing, because I have, spoken with some of the officers that are like, this guy was horrible. Like, he was telling me how horrible the department was, and that, there's no autonomy, that, we can't do anything. And so I'm hearing this and I'm going, well, those FTOs really, to me, are very much in line with, they should be the team builders, right? Like, they're the culture setters. And that's not happening. So just a thought with trying, and maybe some of the agencies are doing, maybe Chief Penn had his recruiters and FTOs in there, but that's the feedback that we've gotten from officers.
Well, I think maybe we missed the mark a little bit today. And I want you to know, you all are the best in the business at making sure you're sending someone who has a fairly clean slate. And that's what I should be wanting in my agency, is give me someone who doesn't show up with too much baggage, right? Whether it's criminal or psychological, whatever it is. Send me someone who doesn't have too much baggage. My job is to outfit them with the baggage they need to move forward with. And a lot of that's attitude. And again, just like we don't teach patience, we don't really teach a lot about attitude. Mm-hmm. And we assume that there are two types of attitude, positive and negative. And we almost believe that everybody has one of those two, and it's natural and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, I say that positive and negative attitudes are reactions to your environment. I'm a very positive attitude guy. And you see how beautiful it is out here on Butler Road. Well, if by the time we finish this, I pack up my things and go to walk back door next door, and it's pouring rain and I'm soaking wet when I get in the house, could I show up with a bad attitude? My great attitude become a bad? Absolutely. My wife will either nurture that bad attitude when I get there, or she's going to try to change it back to the positive. We got to quit assuming there's only two attitudes. I actually believe that we ought to teach attitude. And the attitude I think that is most valuable to teach is neither positive nor negative, because those are reactions to environments. Those are responses. And that's natural. I think we ought to be teaching an attitude of gratitude. And that attitude of gratitude is neither positive nor negative. What it is it's looking for the blessing in every moment. And I'm going to tell you, I think that law enforcement, especially on the line level, is overlooking the greatest blessing of all. And that is that law enforcement is still the coolest job in the world. Yeah. Little kids don't play landscapers and roofers. They're running around playing cops and robbers. And the ones who become the robbers are the ones who don't have the character to make it in the job that we have. We ought to be grateful for that every day. That we're not just the warrior class of the world, but we are held up as being kind of the moral class of the world. We ought to embrace that. And we ought to be so proud of it, because that badge they put on their chest isn't any better than the badge of honor it is to be selected to be your fellow citizen's servant. And whenever you do that, you ought to ride every day smiling. They ought to have to sit on both their hands to keep from waving at everybody. At some point, they should be extremely grateful that they got a chance to do a job that most people dream about. It starts
Absolutely.
there. And that ought to be taught on that field training officer level, 100%.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Gary, you're writing some notes. I hear you. So I'm going to give you an opportunity before we let Paul go and fly to the. Where are you going next? Is this the week off that you have, or?
No, no, no. That was last week. My daughter Emily had our third grandchild, her second child. So we brought a
Congratulations.
new little old baby on the Butler Road, and we're super excited about that. And then I start back full time. I'm going to leave for Alaska tomorrow. I'm doing a week up there. I train in Fairbanks and Anchorage. I love the leadership up there. I meet some of the best leaders in the world up in that state because it's a pioneer state. They don't have a ton of support to be able to call on. And so they really lead organically and they lead as a team. So I get excited about
I
going
love
places
that.
like that.
I love that. Well, before we let you go, Gary, do you have some? I know you have some thoughts and questions.
Do, and I really feel like that whole summary there about the teach the attitude of gratitude is a great way to wrap this up. What I was making notes about is I really have taken away a couple of different frameworks that I'm hearing about. One is this sort of leadership framework about the team and the four roles people are playing, and the need for leaders to be thoughtful about what does their organization need, what do they have, how do they make proper adjustments and whatnot. And then the second one, really this framework around leadership and leadership development. I love how you talk about practicing in the moment, not letting things become an emotional problem for me, because at that point I'm going to be doing things internally that are not healthy. I like this idea of applying leadership at the lowest level possible, creating this culture of real conversations where people are not only heard, but they're respected and they see change based on that. And then wrapping all of that with an attitude of gratitude. I think if any organization can start to apply these frameworks and do it in a very intentional way, it's going to be the way organizations move forward and improve their retention, improve their engagement, improve the end results, and be those public servants that you talk about. The people should feel honored to do and to play those roles. I'm fascinated by all the way you brought all this together. I don't know that I really have a question in there as much as that's just a really helpful framework for at least me, and I think the listeners will
Mhm.
pull a lot out of that.
For me as well.
So
I love how you recap that, Gary.
no doubt. I thought Elizabeth Morris was the best student in every room. Mr. Gary, you have just
Uh,
taken star
Well,
pupil status.
Gary
That
far outshines me when it comes to this.
encapsulated there. Yeah, but I want you to know it is working. There are people who are doing it, not just Chief Penn in Winston-Salem. I got Chief Greg Terry out in Bakersfield, California. Didn't realize that's the ninth largest city in California. He's applying these principles. I got Sheriff Norris up in Kootenai County, Idaho, where Coeur d'Alene is located. This is part of the fabric of his promotional process and hiring process. You have to be able to identify these positions and be able to talk about them and be able to self-reflect on who you are. And maybe my largest organization, I have Sheriff Kelly Martinez, San Diego County, California. She is amazing. If you ever do anything with Kelly Martinez, it's nothing but pure energy and excitement. 7,000 on staff. And
Wow.
she's bringing me out to rotate in, and we're talking about these things so they can keep those conversations going internally. That's what'll change the game. Is
Absolutely.
the tone's always set at the top, and that
Well,
means they ought to be the most grateful.
so many people are wanting it. We need to clone you. Or have you thought about, and you may have you thought about training a team? I mean, no one's a replacement to Paul Butler, but I mean,
Seriously.
this is a message that is so important and is obviously resonating with top leaders, throughout the world. Have you thought about creating a team?
I've been approached about that some. There are some big visionaries out there like you, and I certainly respect them because I wouldn't call myself a visionary. Kind of living in the moment, and those are the things I see. I'm enjoying the training. I like working a lot, but you're right. At some point, I'm going to have to dial that back. I enjoy being at home, obviously, but what I don't want to do is miss the moment to meet that need. I said I thought the biggest difference I was going to make in law enforcement was while I was on the job, and I was going to retire and just have to stare at that shadow box at who I used to be, and hope that that was enough to kind of feed that beast of wanting to feel accomplished. But I realized that I've made a far greater difference since I left the job. And it's not because of the people I'm talking to, it's because of the people I've learned from. You've been part of that process for me. Everywhere I go, I meet these dynamite leaders that I stand in their shadow of. Just like you mentioned about Mr. Gary was for you, I got a ton of people like that for me these days. And what I'm trying to do is really get my footing on this, and then hopefully maybe put together a program or a book or something that everybody can kind of lean on when I'm not available. But I appreciate your support.
Yes, absolutely. And it is an honor to know you. You really are a light in this world. And I just thank you for your time. And well, real quick before we wrap up, where can listeners find you? I know you have a great marketing
I appreciate that.
person, but where can they find you?
I do have great folks around me. I mean, you've kind of heard the only thing I'm okay at in my life. I'm a speaker, and everything else I'm not really great at. So there's a lot of people who do business out there. I'm very thankful. I have a website. I have my own business, paul-butler.com, paul-butler.com. And that is where you kind of see where I'm going and can talk to me about coming to speak for your organization. But I also have a group around me, golawenforcement.com, and they are sponsoring my podcast. They are the ones who kind of organize it and put it together. And that is the Paul Butler Leadership for a Lifetime podcast on Apple and Spotify. And I want you to know, just the other day, we hit 7,500 downloads. I mean, we've only been doing this a few months, right?
Congrats.
I mean, so it is kind of catching like wildfire. I'm proud of that. But I give them credit for that. I mean, I'm just the talker. They do everything else. And I think that I have to make sure I give a shout out. You and I know that sponsors are the lifeblood of everything.
Absolutely.
FMRT is this amazing sponsor at a lot of conferences. Also have to give Extra Duty Solutions a shout out. They saw something in me early on before most people knew my name, and they've helped support me and build that brand. They're the best in the business at what they do, but they've helped me become the best in the business at what I do. And so there's nothing better in good partnerships, and I'm thankful every day for Extra Duty Solutions.
Absolutely. Those relationships matter, those partnerships. And of course, we have a close relationship with them. And David Wooten, being retired Nash County, knew him for many years and then came to know his wife who does work with us. So, well, thank you again for your time. Love the view. Next time we'll have to do this in person, but I can't wait to see you. I know we're probably going to run into each other again this summer, but please call me if you need anything. And it was great speaking with you.
Y'all are the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Mind Matters. Please give us your thoughts, and if you like this episode, feel free to share it with others. You can also find more content and choose to follow us on our Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at the FMRT Group. Thanks, and we'll see you next time on Mind Matters.